Hi, everybody. We are here today to talk about technology risk and cybersecurity. Hi, everybody. We are here today with Susan Parente. She is a technologist, a teacher, a consultant, and a subject matter expert in project management and cybersecurity. She's going to help us understand some things today about risk and about the new world of technology that we're growing into. Susan, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be here.
Susan, we're going to dive right into this. That's what we do around here. That's how we roll. So let's just get right into it. So first of all, as you know, I spent a lot of time talking and researching this issue of this new world of technology that we're all kind of growing into. We have a lot of advances in automation, in artificial intelligence, and augmented reality, and many other fields. We have new technologies such as blockchain. We're looking at this potential explosion in new data, which is going to exceed anything that we saw in previous revolutions, like, for instance, the mobile phone revolution. And all of this is going to create new opportunities, in particular, as it's related to data and the explosion of data. But as you have this explosion of interconnectedness, I like to say this world of total interconnectedness, and data, you're going to have a lot more risk, a lot more cyber risk. And so to start this off, because I know that you specialize in both project management and cybersecurity, so I want to ask a specific question, which is how much of the burden of this, the management of these and the mitigation of these cyber risks is going to fall on the shoulder of specialists, and how much of it is going to fall on the shoulder of your traditional project managers? To what extent are they going to be expected to be part of the front line of defense for cyber risk as we move into this world of total interconnectedness?
Well, definitely in the past, project managers have involved IT security people. They've said, oh, okay, I'm doing this or that on my project, and they involve them. The good ones involve them early. The ones that are not as wise involve them later in the project. But in the past, that was okay. It's not okay anymore. We can't just leave it up to the IT security or cybersecurity specialists. Project managers need to be aware of it. Security is a part of every risk in some regards, especially any IT projects. Like, their security risks they're just part of your project management, part of recognizing what your requirements are. And I think the days are gone where call in the specialist for that. We have to learn to be specialists in it. There's a lot more education that project managers, particularly in IT, but in any area, need to be aware of security. I mean, I had an example happen the other day. I'm trying to think how I can share this. So it was an insurance company, and they asked me to mail them a document. The document has my name, address, and policy number. Now, it's a policy that was being canceled, and they gave me the email address to send it to. And I said, well, can I send this in a secured way? Oh, we're good. We're good on security. We have a whole department for that. I kid you not. They literally said we have a whole department for that. Okay. And I said, well, all you've given me is an email address here. That's not secured. Oh, no, I'm sure it is. We have a department that deals with security, with cybersecurity. I said, well, I'm in the industry of cybersecurity, and if you give me an email address and I have an attachment and I email it to you, it is not secured. I'm not telling you you don't secure it once you receive the email, but between my computer and you, it is not secured. And they did not get that. And that person is not, she's a call center person, where you call and you talk about your policy. Did my latest bill get paid? Whatever. They're not an IT person, but they don't understand cybersecurity. They have a canned answer. And most people would not know that what she said was incorrect. It's 100% incorrect. I would bet my career on it. But she was pretty certain it wasn't. And I didn't want to make her wrong. I just okay, well, let me think about the risk of what I'm sending. And that's what I think about. Like, what is the risk of me sending something with my address, a policy number for a canceled policy? There are worse PII things, but this is the type of thing that, buyer beware for sure. But as a professional, even if you're not in IT, being aware of where does cybersecurity butt up against what you do. I mean, if you're a refrigerator repairman, cybersecurity is coming at you. I mean, it's unavoidable.
Well, I'm glad you said that. You said, where does cybersecurity butt up against what you do? So specifically then in the arena of project management, if you're a traditional project manager, and by the way, a lot of our audience members are traditional rank and file, project management types. Where is as we enter this new world, the world of total interconnectedness, where do you see that the biggest risk areas are? Where is this intersection taking place in other words, in the course of the job of a traditional project manager? Where do you see this intersection?
Well, I mean, it depends on the type of work you're doing, things like that. But I think it's a consideration for all projects. And to me, when you start with requirements gathering, what requirements relate to security? I know back in the day when I was doing software development types of projects, we would start looking right away at data, individual data and collaborative data to see, well, if I share somebody's name, that's okay. But if I share their name and their address and their phone number, now I get into like a different avenue of information. And so recognizing, what are the requirements around security, and those are going to depend on your environment, the type of data. If you're dealing with, I do federal government contract work. If you're putting names of individuals who are SESs, so they're like appointed people, and you're giving, you have information about their physical home address and their phone number, that's a security issue, right? If it's just, a club, let's say there's a club mailing list and it is people's home address and phone numbers, not as much of an issue. So it's not just the data, but it's what about that data? So it all comes down to what are those requirements. And so at the initiation of the project, when you're listening for requirements for what type of system, software system, or whatever it is you're doing, even if it's not IT, is security at play? So, I mean, even your home, you're doing a home renovation. Okay, well, where's the cybersecurity there? Well, it depends. Am I putting the Internet of Things devices in my kitchen? Okay, well, now we have cybersecurity. Now I'm butting up against cybersecurity. If I'm not putting that in my kitchen, then maybe I'm not. So that's where it's something that you should be asking for every project, technically. And I think that people are thinking about it for IT, but I don't think they think about it for everything. And I think we're becoming a part of that society where it's just ubiquitous. My father's 94 years old and he uses a tablet. Okay. My mom's finally on a smartphone. I mean, they don't have a landline anymore. So this is unavoidable. And when you think about all the information that's on your phone, I mean, I can do banking on my phone. I do all sorts of things. Thank God I'm not a person who loses my phone, my glasses, things like that. But I mean, I feel like if I could live longer without my computer than my phone, and that's pretty scary. But so this is where do we butt up against it? It's kind of where don't we? I mean, my car has a key that turns and the engine turns over. That's kind of rare nowadays.
Well, you mentioned the importance of focusing on this during the requirements gathering process, project initiation, that anything involving that you've got your data requirements and you've got your system requirements, and that is going to be mapped out in the very beginning. And that's going to be a large, in terms of project management, what the role of project managers, that's a very important part of this process. But beyond requirements, where could you give us some examples beyond the requirements gathering phase where there is still significant risk that butts up against the traditional job of a project manager?
Well, in design and development, and that's, when exactly that shows up depends on what approach you're using. If you're using a traditional approach, it would come when you're doing unit testing and user acceptance testing. If you're using an agile approach, it's in every iteration. So before you actually deliver that product of the iteration, you need to do testing. So that's going to show up anywhere you're doing testing. You should be testing for security. And what does that mean? It goes back to the requirements. So it has to start with the requirements, because if you don't have the requirements in mind, you're not going to test to those. And then also in delivery, making sure that not only do things work as they ought to, data secured, but what's the environment you're putting it into? There's in the cybersecurity realm that I'm in right now, there's a lot of people that say, oh, well, if you have like a username and a passcode to like get into the general network, then you don't need a code to get into the specific system. And yes, people like the idea, single sign-on, that kind of stuff is really great. However, it's kind of the equivalent of me putting a whole pile of cash on my dining room table and having the blinds up and saying, well, the front door is locked, we're fine. So it's like, yes, having people have security to get onto the network is one thing, but you also need to secure things that are there. And so we use this design where we modulate that security so that, okay, you can get on the network, that's great, but does that mean you can get into, if it's a house, can I get into every room in the house? I should not be able to get into every room in the house. I should only get into the rooms in the house that I need to get into to do my job. And then when I get into a room in the house, maybe there's something that's so secure that it's now in a safe in the room in the house, right? And so having those layers is really important. And there's two reasons. One, malicious actors, but even more importantly, is people accidentally causing damage. So first of all, breaches often are the cause of somebody who's an insider. Okay, so they either, were benevolent about it or it was accidental. So to say, well, the only people who can get access to this system or to this data are people who have gotten approval, have gotten authority to be on our network. Well, that's not secured enough, because if I can be in any system on the network, now if I get breached, I click on a phishing link. Now everything that I have access to, everybody can get there. So if I get hacked, it's like they have full access to everything. Whereas if I only have access to the things I need to do my job, even if I'm breached, it's not breaching the whole company. So that type of layered is really, really important. And I think that people tend to be overly confident about their security. We could actually say this is sort of like a human phenomenon. We're overly confident. Oh, it's fine. I have a door. My front door has a lock. I'm fine. Like, that's overconfidence. If the possession you're worried about is inside your house, just having a front door lock is not sufficient. What is the possession that you're worried about? What's its value? Monetary value or risk value? Something that if it was in the wrong hands could cause grave danger to yourself, a grave loss to an organization. And because I do work in the federal government, we look at it, does it cause loss of life? And that's how things are classified, whether they're secret or top secret, is actually a loss of life and risk to our country. So I don't think most people think of it that way. And I think that being a cybersecurity professional in the federal space, I think of those layers of security, and I think about the danger some information being released to somebody has to me. I'll give you another example. So to try to stay out of the IT project management arena, real estate. So let's say you have a check that you're going to put a down payment on a house, and you sign a check to the escrow account for your first, I don't know, like $5,000 you want to secure the house that you want to buy. I have had multiple real estate agents either attempt to or actually email my check. So you got my check, you got my name, you got my account number, you got my routing number for my bank. It looks like a lot of PII to me. How many people in real estate know anything about cybersecurity? And I say, how many people in real estate should know about cybersecurity? Every single one of them, and they don't know. And it's I saw I don't know, this is like a commercial or something like that. Giving your child or family member a computer without teaching them about cybersecurity is like giving your teenage kid a bottle of alcohol and the keys to your car and say, have fun. And we do it all the time.
Where, do you see any specific new, what are the new threats that are coming from, say, the growth of Internet of Things? How does that put us all at greater risk in itself? Or even just the growth of as artificial intelligence becomes increasingly more embedded, or even blockchain apps, which are going to become more and more mainstream, the supposedly unhackable blockchain. Where do you see in all of these new areas, do you see things to be concerned about and new levels of risk?
So if there's something that I can do over the internet. So for example, my parents have a thermostat that I can control from my phone. Great. It's really awesome. So it's a great tool to have. I mean, they can't reach their thermostat for myriad of reasons, but they're elderly, etc. So it's great. I can adjust that. However, if I can do that, so can somebody else, right? And so you start to think to yourself, well, could somebody turn off the heat? Could somebody make it hotter? Could, I don't know, like, just, I think of crazy things like, I don't know, maybe the utility company cranks up the heat in the middle of the winter, so you don't realize it, and now you're paying more money for your heat. There's little kind of things, but I just think to myself, if I can do something remotely, if I have access to something remotely through the internet, somebody else can gain that access. Ring doorbell, right? Ring doorbell is great, and by the way, they save your files on the cloud. Yeah, I don't know about that. Do I want Ring Doorbell to have files of all of my going in and out of my house and on the cloud for, I don't know, forever, right? You delete things, especially like social media, you delete things, they don't actually get deleted. You're just saying, I don't want to see that that's not erased on that hard drive or.
Well, that brings up an interesting question, which is how secure is the cloud itself, and how do they mitigate these risks? We are putting more and more trust in the cloud, and you even said yourself, you delete something, it doesn't necessarily go away. So do you have any insight into what these gigantic cloud companies are doing to protect themselves from being hacked, or and to preserve the integrity of your data? Do you have any insight into that?
I do have some insight in that. I'm not going to talk cloud companies because I don't want to say anything disparaging, but in general, so the federal government, when they use the cloud, they make sure that cloud is within certain vicinities. So you pay extra for that, but everybody can do it. Private industries can do it. They can say, I want cloud space, but it has to be within the continental US. If you don't request that, your cloud space could be in another country. What country? I don't know, whatever country that the cloud service provider wants to give it to you in. And guess what? It's cheaper in certain countries than others. It's probably more expensive for your data to be in the US than it is to be in another country. And you don't think about that. Well, it's in the cloud. Okay, where is it? Well, I don't know. It could be in a country that was friendly one day and isn't the other day. I mean, we had commerce going on in Russia until we said, yeah, if you're in Russia, you probably want to leave, right? So not a friendly place to be anymore. I don't know. Are there any cloud providers with cloud space in Russia? I don't know. I mean, you don't know where your data is. I think the federal government has an idea where their data is because they make sure that it is actually in government secured space. And what they do is they compartmentalize that so that their data is not touching other people's data. So if I put something in the cloud, you put something in the cloud, those files could be sitting right next to each other. Fundamentally, it could be on the same server. In the federal government, there are requirements for government cloud space that data isn't touching anybody else's data, meaning it's not on a physical server that's the same. It gets very complicated quickly. The things that they can do with software, it would not be obvious to you if something is, all of your data could be in the cloud, but it could be in totally different locations. They have ability to replicate and to actually have like kind of little think of them as like satellite offices where your data exists. So let's say my data was in India, but there's a satellite location for my data that's in New York. So when I go to ping my data, I get it right away because it knows the things that I ask for the most. So the things I ask for the most come really quickly, but the things that I ask for rarely might take a little longer because they actually have to go to India to get that data. I don't know how they're managing that, but it's all the way the provider sets it up. But it's very interesting. It's very novel. It's really great what they're doing from a technology perspective. But from a world economic view, I get very concerned. Gas prices went up a whole bit because of something that happened in the world. Like that butterfly effect that we talked about, we are financially, data-wise, like we are incredibly interconnected in this world. And the cyber part of it is just making it even more concerning. I don't know how else to say it, but it's almost like the tanks on the ground and the rockets shooting at buildings are probably the least of your concerns.
So I think it's safe to say that cybersecurity is a growth area.
Oh yeah, I tell everybody if you're not sure what you want to do and you're good at technology, go into cybersecurity. Well, I think I might want to be a lawyer. Okay, great. Go into cybersecurity and law, because by the way, that's a whole huge gap.
Interesting. That's a great. That's fantastic advice. I think especially for college kids and young people, but also for people that are in the middle of their career and they want to switch. They want to switch careers. If you're a project manager, how say a typical PMP, project management professional, how important would it be for you to actually go out on the side and acquire that, that cybersecurity education, or how much of this can you kind of do, on your own, just through awareness and taking a few webinars on awareness?
You can do a lot on awareness that's going to help you with your everyday job, but career wise, there's like a PMP CISSP club. I belong to it, and I know 2 to 3 other people who belong to it. I probably know around 700 or 800 people professionally, and maybe more. LinkedIn stops telling you after a certain amount, as you know, Michael, a lot of people. There are not a lot of people that have that, but what I'm seeing happening, people in cybersecurity are getting their PMP, and people in project management are getting their cybersecurity certification. I do think it makes a huge difference professionally. From the perspective of managing the project, you could learn a lot of things yourself. You can learn them for free. ISC Squared has some great free resources for people. Actually, just to know, they have free resources for your children, for parents, on cyber awareness, which is really, really great. I'm a huge proponent of that. But also there's things that you can just find on the internet. So you can educate yourself. But to get a certification is really going to put you in a different space professionally. It's actually what got me more into the cybersecurity space. So I started out in project risk management, and I was working with people in information assurance. And I said, I really like this stuff. It's my cup of tea. And that's what caused me to get my CISSP. And then after that, I got a CRIS certification. That's through ISACA, which is another certifying body. I'm actually working on 2 other ones now, CISM and my CAP. So there's a ton of them out there. I think this is a good professional space for myself and for any other project manager who has interest in it. But I would say no matter what type of profession you're in, having cybersecurity awareness on top of that is really where I think innovation shows up, anywhere where 2 fields of study are combined together. And a perfect example of this is Steve Jobs. So he took some calligraphy classes, and he was into computers and that IT type of stuff. He mixed those together, and we now have this great user interface. And for those of you who are my age or older, user interface wasn't so great. When I started with computers, first of all, it was like command line, C prompt command line stuff. Okay. So thank God for that. But that's where innovation shows up. It's when you mix these fields together. You could take cybersecurity and mix it with any field, and you're going to break through that. And even retail and cybersecurity. Well, how does cybersecurity have to do with retail? Supply chain. There's lots of data, lots of information. If you're, let's say you're the owner of the grocery store, okay, and you get hacked, guess what? Your aisles are going to be empty because you don't even know what's not in your store, especially, a large store. There's no, it's pervasive. And believe me, I like to step away and like, oh, I'll just go for a walk in the park kind of thing. But I'm still there with my cell phone. I mean, I'm not really like off, right? It's everywhere. It's everything. I mean, I'm not even a big like, oh, let me do everything online and stuff like that. In fact, it's a funny thing. I say to my colleagues, cybersecurity professionals, and I ask them, what do you think of the Internet of Things? And you know what? Every one of them has said, I don't have that stuff in my house.
Everybody, I know everybody says that. All of the most sophisticated, the most brilliant engineers in our field say that they would never use that. They would never tap into anything with the Internet of Things, which is very sobering. Which brings us to another kind of question I had that was specific to technology. Obviously, the Internet of Things seems just absolutely ripe for cyber crime and for all kinds of risk. What about the blockchain? As we see the blockchain become eventually stabilized, become more mainstream, and more people developing apps for it, and we see it revolutionizing and disrupting many different fields. Do you feel that that's inherently safer as a platform because of its nature, because of its structure, or is it a bit of fool's gold to put too much faith in its security? I mean, what are your particular thoughts, if any, about the blockchain as a solution to some of these exposure areas?
It is safer, but it's still, I think of it this way, it's a puzzle, and you got a lot of smart people out there who like solving puzzles. So if you build a smarter puzzle, you're just going to find more smart people to solve it, right? So it is still a key, and it's a key that somebody can hack. It may be harder to hack, but just give them a little bit of time and they'll hack that one too. So the only way blockchain or anything is going to be a good solution is if it's a moving target. That the best security that I've ever seen in my life has been a moving target, meaning I'll give you an example, physical security. So doing a lot of government contract work, one of the biggest mistakes that you can make is the check-in procedure or the physical security procedures being the same all the time. You should just change them up. Now, I've seen them change a lot in my career, just working at different buildings. I wonder if that's accidental or purposeful. I like to believe it's purposeful. So if I change the physical security access rules every 2 or 3 weeks, doesn't even matter what I change them to. If I change them, I actually increase security because it's a moving target, right? So you can't then get some intel, find out what it is so that you have all the things that you need to have to be able to get in. Or like every time you create a strategy, a policy, a plan, there's always going to be holes. So my theory for security is do it differently. So this people actually tell you this. People who are deep into physical security. If you're concerned about somebody following you to work, things like that, guess what? Don't go to work the same way every day. It's kind of crazy. I'm not going to say I do it. I'm just saying, think about it though. Think about how many things you do repetitively. Every time you do something repetitively, that becomes then a security risk. And so physical security is an example of that. And how I relate this to blockchain. So blockchain, yeah, okay, it's harder. But I mean, there was a time when passwords that were 6 digits long were hard. They're not anymore. I mean, I don't even have a password for federal government access. You need a card with a chip in it and a PIN. And if you actually have a password, there are some places that still have passwords. I think they have to be 24 characters, uppercase, lowercase, number, and special character. Like you can't remember something that long. You barely type it correctly, even if you did remember it, right? So change. And that's why you see systems with passwords, they'll have you change them every 90 days. at
Oh,
least.
well, I think my point about the blockchain was that, this claim that it's unhackable, which is a little bit like saying the Titanic can't sink.
Yeah.
But as far as we know, it is currently unhackable using existing technology. But as you said, people will come along and they will figure that out. I mean, if you have advances in computing power,
Yep.
which we're seeing, I mean, if you're going to have an explosion in computing power, either because of new paradigms of computing power, I mean, quantum computing is, all the big cloud, providers are experimenting with cloud computing. They're real. It's not science fiction. You've got, molecular computing and DNA computing and all different types of things that are going on at the microscopic level, and the biological level even. And sooner or later, some state actor that has the resources and the power to develop and innovate a machine that is based on those principles is going to use it to do something malicious on a grand scale. And so I think it's definitely chilling. I mean, a lot of all the encryption that runs the world currently could be broken by a quantum computer if applied in a malicious way. And I think that, I don't know what the solution is to that. I know a lot of experts, like you said, a lot of experts are terrified of the IoT and they say they won't use it. A lot of experts also don't have an answer to what will happen if a quantum computer gets developed by, say, China before we do, what that will mean for our national security and for all the encryption that runs everything. I don't know if you have any particular thoughts about that.
So, if you think about wars, you think about, the old, like the Revolutionary War. Didn't they come with like, they all like got, were dressed up and they had their guns and they just shot at each other on the hill, and whoever's left standing, you're like, okay, they won. As ridiculous as that is, to like guerrilla warfare is as ridiculous as what our next warfare is. And it's not, for a while it was terrorism. I think that's over. I think it's cyber. I mean, ever since the conflict in Russia and Ukraine has shown up, I don't mean to be negative, but I'm waiting for which system's going to be ransomware, hacked, whatever. Like, we both have that capability. People are worried about nuclear war. I'm like, that's probably not the biggest thing to be worried about. I think everybody knows, like, they hit the button, we hit the button, like we all go to nothing. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I'm just saying I think that's kind of a stalemate. I think that the cyber stuff it can be quite devastating. I mean, we do really depend on our systems for everything. I mean, look what happened when the pipeline went out. That pipeline did not affect me. I didn't know it, but there were towns around me affected by it, but I was not, because our gas came from another location. But I mean, if that was not a warning to people, I don't know what is. And one of my colleagues works for a bank, and what he says, and he does cybersecurity, and what he says that his boss, who's in charge of cybersecurity for the organization, and actually I even think the CEO of the bank, he says, I'm not worried about today's threats. I'm worried about the threats years from now, next year, the year after that, the year after that. Now, that's a bank that's being smart about cybersecurity. If you're dealing with what's so now, you're already behind. You've got to be looking out to what the next thing is. So, like, blockchain, great, it's secured for now. It's just secured for now. Like, it's a matter of enough energy, enough knowledge. And then, once you put artificial intelligence into it, it's like, I don't have anything happy to say. I will say this, I don't want to like send your viewers in a different direction, so to speak, but if you're curious about artificial intelligence, go YouTube Elon Musk on artificial intelligence. This is one of the very smart people we know in the world right now. He's highly concerned about it. You know what? We should be highly concerned about it. I'm highly concerned about it because, there's like the Moore's law. Well, in artificial intelligence, when it gets to the point of being so intelligent and its ability to make itself more intelligent quickly, which it already does, but the speed that's going to happen, once it's at that tipping point and we notice it, it's already too late. And what I mean by it's already too late is if something is so intelligent as to create more, to learn as it's acting, we tend to show up like ants in the world. I mean, it's chilling, and I'm not trying to scare people, but we really need to be responsible about that. And I think that probably the best thing we can do now is educate people that this, the cybersecurity things, the artificial intelligence things, I don't think there's a way to stop that, but we can be prepared. And I think we're ill prepared. I think we underestimate how connected and dependent we are on data, on the internet, for everything. I mean, even a person who says, "Oh, I don't have a smartphone. My phone's plugged in the wall. I don't use a computer." Da 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 da. I can tell you, almost every aspect of their life is affected by cybersecurity. They go to the grocery store, they get food. Even if you don't drive a car, you go to the grocery store to get food. Guess what? How'd the food get there? It came by gas. So if somebody takes a pipeline out, you're done. Electricity, that goes out, you're done. I mean, the infrastructure stuff, it's just insane. I mean, and again, I'm not trying to scare people, but just be very aware that pretty much everything in our world is connected with IT, and we are very interconnected. And the supply chain stuff that people started noticing the last few years, we are very affected by supply chain. We might consider that maybe we have some backup plans where we're not dependent on other countries for certain things, because that puts us in a security risk. That's what I think the future wars are like. I don't think they're battleships and guns, and I could be wrong, but I think that one day we'll look back on that and it'll be as comical as the people meeting in the field and shooting, and whoever's left standing wins. Like that's what we're looking at in the future. And it's going to be a lot more devastating to the general person. We think of war as like people with military attire. General people are going to be more affected by war in the future because of that.
Susan, I normally like to end these interviews on an optimistic note, but I don't think that's appropriate under these circumstances. I think it's important that we leave our audience with a sobering message, and I think that is sufficiently sobering. This is serious stuff, and people need to take it seriously. I think we covered a lot of good ground. You gave a lot of good advice about ways that people can get certified and get educated. You gave them a lot of insight into that. I appreciate that. And I know I'm going to have to sort of pay a little more attention to this myself, although I'm actually pretty much a Luddite, even though I do a lot of these interviews with people and produce a lot of education in my personal life. I'm very disconnected. But I loved having you on, and we're going to have you come back. I hope you'll be amenable to that. Would you like to come back?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, it was great. It was great having you. I thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, sounds wonderful. And I leave it with this, being afraid of things. I want to kind of wake people up. I don't want people to be afraid. I want them to see, here's an opportunity where I can get educated. Here's an opportunity where I can be proactive. If you're educated and you're proactive, you have a lot less to be afraid of. And so I'm more interested in waking people up. I'm not trying to scare anybody. So just be awake about it, and you'll be in a much better place.
That's probably a better closing message than mine. So thanks for that. You covered me there. Okay. See you next time, Susan.
Thank you.